Hi, I'm Erik Barboza, and this is my presentation on cloud computing. I've titled it Life in the Clouds, and it's a look at the impact of cloud computing on the public, lawmakers, and forensic investigators. Here is a brief overview of this presentation. I'll begin by describing cloud computing and how it works, and then describe the benefits and shortcomings it affords to both individuals and businesses alike. We'll then switch gears and look at the pros and cons for investigations, and then I'll introduce you to some case examples that help to describe exactly how delicate cloud computing is in the forensics world of today. We'll then wrap up by looking at legal and privacy concerns, and then finally forensics concerns. So what exactly is cloud computing? Essentially, it can be defined as a style of computing which allows and provides for scalable and virtualized computer-related resources using the Internet. It's basically a network of computers that pool together their resources in order to run applications for a user. It is software-oriented, and it's also a relatively new technology. Looking at this graph, one can see the incredible and explosive growth that cloud computing has undergone within only the past couple of years. It's really amazing and is an emerging trend among businesses and consumers alike. Here are just a few of the cloud-based services offered to consumers. They include Google Docs, Yahoo, Microsoft Office, and even Facebook, the largest social networking site on the planet. So this is how cloud-based computing works. As stated previously, it's a network of computers that deliver software and data to a user. The applications that are run are independent of a particular computer or server, meaning that the resources that are used to run these applications are floating around in the cloud. And basically, when a user accesses these resources, they're interacting with the front end, which is everything that the user can interact with and sees, while all the real computing is done in the back end with all the software and hardware. There are many advantages to cloud-based computing. First and foremost, it's cost-effective. Businesses once had to keep track and invest resources and money into storage solutions to keep track of their data. No longer is that necessary because the data and information is kept on the cloud. This also opens up the possibility of greater storage, as companies essentially pay as they go and have access to near limitless data. As well, there's less maintenance involved, as they don't have to hire technical guys to keep track of and update these data solutions. Cloud-based computing also opens up the possibility for collaboration between individuals and workers, as they can create documents and edit them together and collaborate over presentations. But perhaps the greatest advantage to this is the access to data. No matter what network or what device you're using, the application that you're accessing or the information that you're accessing is always going to be the same. There are disadvantages to cloud-based computing, however. The biggest concern today is the long-term viability of the data itself. Its availability could become a major issue should the provider no longer offer the services due to bankruptcy, going out of business, or merging with another company. As well, in the case of a server crash, data may become inaccessible. But what if a provider decides to switch to a pay-to-use service? This could potentially lock out customers who haven't paid the fee, losing their data. The areas currently under fire in the field of cloud computing are forensic investigations and legislation. Let's first look at the pros that cloud-based computing offers forensic investigations. First, some services offer MD5 hashes, ensuring that copies of data that are made are exact. Also, services like Microsoft include metadata with their files. Bit-by-bit copies of the data on the cloud can be made, and these copies are faster than ones that would be made using hardware devices because they operate at the same speed of the cloud. And these copies also allow the investigation to become portable and not simply retained to the cloud itself. Of course, you have to take the good with the bad. Temporary files may be deleted as soon as the session is ended because they are stored in the cloud rather than on the computer itself. As well, the host, such as Google, can delete files and accounts at any time. All of this can make the discovery phase of litigation, where parties are required to produce documents, incredibly difficult or downright impossible. The extraction of data is made even more difficult due to the fact that evidence could be unintentionally contaminated by someone who is rendered a non-professional, and this would leave the data or information inadmissible in a court of law. There's also the problem of jurisdiction. Data is stored throughout the globe, oftentimes on different servers at different times. The network itself knows no boundaries between nations and territories. Google is a prime example of this, as it maintains data centers throughout the globe. All of this poses problems when the US law contradicts that of another country. As it is already, United States and European officials cannot agree on privacy issues, meaning that data extraction cannot be done if foreign courts have jurisdiction. What does this mean for the consumer? They could possibly end up paying fines to the United States courts for failing to comply with subpoenas that foreign courts ignore. Perhaps the biggest problem with the field of cloud computing and forensic investigations today is the fact that, at present, there's no universal method for extracting data from the cloud. I call this the ECPA concern, dealing with the Electronic Communications Privacy Act. It was enacted years ago as a way of standardizing the gathering of information over electronic communications. However, it's an outdated law, and it no longer applies to things like cloud computing, which are new technologies. And data can now be easily acquired with a simple subpoena or a warrant, which creates privacy issues between the government and individuals. There is also a legal concern. Is there an expectation of privacy? Does the company holding the information of the cloud possess the data, or is it still private? There are a couple of cases that stand out to me that help to exemplify this issue. The first one is Rorschach versus the United States of America. You can see that the judicial branch of the government is taking the stance that data stored in the cloud does not have the same assumptions in privacy and due process as data stored on someone's personal devices. In this case, the government had taken the position that electronic communications, as based in the cloud, such as cloud-based email, do not require warrants or subpoenas. The second case is a case that involved Google Docs and the FBI. The FBI was investigating a company that was sending out fraudulent emails, and the company was Pulse Marketing. They wanted to gather information on them, so they subpoenaed Google with a warrant. Now this was a landmark case because it demonstrated that the government could gather information in the cloud. This was the first of its type and would be followed up by many more. So one might ask, what is being done about these legal and forensic issues? On the legal side, there's digital due process, and on the forensic side, there's cloidiphon. First, let's elaborate on digital due process. It's a collaboration of companies and organizations, including the likes of Microsoft, Google, and AT&T, that are calling for revisions to the ECPA. Highlighted in blue on this website are 4 of their main points. They read, all private content held by a service provider should be protected by the same standard as material on your laptop. A warrant must be obtained. Currently, the rules are murky and confusing. The government can go after server email older than 180 days, for instance, with only a subpoena, no judge needed, while more recent emails need a warrant. Warrants must be sought to access location information. Currently, says the CDT, GPS data is protected by warrant, but other data, such as that from cell phones, is not. Courts have been all over the ballpark on this issue. For transactional data that might include email headers but not message content, the coalition says that a judge should be involved, though a warrant may not be needed. And finally, subpoenas should only be used where government has a particular person whose data they seek. They shouldn't be used for bulk requests on many subscribers at once without a court order. Essentially, these are meant to ensure clarity and set up uniform rules by which law enforcement can act. From a forensic standpoint of view, there's cloidiphon, which is a project that has been developed to unveil vulnerabilities in cloud computing that may be beneficial to forensic investigators. It will outline the impact on forensic investigations that the cloud has, and run tests on live digital forensics, which is a form of forensics that is still in its infancy and is still growing. In all, it will determine whether the techniques of today are effective in the cloud. Thus far in its research, it has called for new control measures and cryptographic techniques in the cloud to cut down on crime. And there is a desire for new tools to protect security and the information of those that place their faith in the cloud. For more information on the topics discussed in this presentation today, you can go over to my website, where I delve into much greater detail on these subjects. In conclusion, cloud computing offers enormous benefits to individuals and businesses who decide to use it. It is an emerging technology that is here to stay. However, in order to perfect it, changes need to be made by lawmakers and forensic investigators. With all that said, it is a new and welcomed addition to the technology revolution. Thank you for watching. I'm Erik Barboza.